Hey loves, Haley Steinfeld here. Let's be real. When I'm on the red carpet, everyone wants to know whose dress I'm wearing. But here's the thing. We're so focused on those details, we're missing something that's actually way more important. Breast health. It's wild. Breasts get so much attention, but they're still so ignored when it matters most. Don't know what I'm talking about? Tune in on February 9th and visit yourattentionplease.com. That's yourattentionplease.com. See you then.
Judge Jeanine Pirro.
She's the outspoken host.
Judge Jeanine Pirro is dominating the headlines right now.
This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome, everyone, to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. I hope everyone is enjoying their day so far. It's a beautiful day here in New York City, and as always, we're armed and ready to serve justice with all my great listeners here on the Red Apple Audio Network. Now, folks, this is not just a Sunday, it is Super Bowl Sunday. So I am cooking up a few things, and so I'm very excited today. I'm excited about the game. I'm excited about the camaraderie and the patriotism that I think will come from it. But that's just me. I don't know how you feel about it. But there is so much that happened this week in America, folks. You know what? We just can't keep up. The man will not stop. President Trump is like, he is like a buzzsaw. He's just going through Washington. He's fulfilling his promises. And the identification by Doge, you know, within a week of coming into office, of the outrageous expense that, and the money, the American money that is going to foreign efforts that are not aligned in any way with American national interest is stunning to me. You've heard about it all week, I'm sure. We've got, apparently they just found $10 million of meals to Al-Qaeda linked terrorists. And millions to DEI, whether it's an opera in Colombia or trans surgeries or bizarre, outrageous money that is given not to other governments, some of it to governments, but most of it to non-government organizations that, are, not responsible like a government might be. And I got to tell you, I don't know if it's the prosecutor in me, but I think this stuff, if you dig deep and you peel back the layer of the onion, you're going to find corruption and all kinds of kickbacks. Because think about this. They have shown that not one submission for aid was refused. So everything that went into the USAID got paid, so that if it went to a terrorist organization, they didn't pull back. If it went to a fraudulent group, they didn't pull back. The money just went out. It's just billions of dollars that have gone to foreign countries, to people who, hate us, and many of whom are not aligned with our interests. But why would we do that? Think about it. Why would the politician or someone in Congress want this money to go to other countries? I believe that it is a breeding ground for kickbacks, that the money goes over there, nobody checks it, no government checks it, it goes to individual organizations, and the guy or the woman who sent the money there gets a kickback somewhere, whether it's in an LLC or whether it's in an offshore account. It's like, Bob Menendez and the gold bars. And think about it. Joe Biden started with foreign relations. I mean, he was a pro at getting money from foreign governments. I mean, so anytime American money is entangled with foreign non-government organizations, it is prime for kickbacks and prime for corruption. But that's something that I think will be unearthed as we go forward. Now, today we're going to be talking with some great guests. We've got Rick Grenell, who's a former acting director of the National Intelligence Agency. He's the one, folks, who went to Venezuela and said, you're going to take our people and your people, I should say, your criminals back. And by the way, give us our prisoners. And Maduro caved. He did. And I'm also later going to be joined by Steve Cortes. He's new to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. He is a 2016 and 2020 Trump surrogate. Great guy, really smart. He's going to talk about the illegals who don't want to leave and they're flying their own flags, not because they love their country, like, maybe the Irish do on St. Patrick's Day or the Italians on Columbus Day, but, like a threat, like this is who we love. So it's all coming up here in just a few moments on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Judge Jeanine.
Hi, I'm Jeanine Pirro, and this is Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Today, we're talking about illegals raising their flag in this country, and maybe it's about time you raised your economic flag and recognize that Colonial Metals Group is the group that will be able to help you stand strong in the future.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Joining us is the former acting director of national intelligence and now the presidential envoy for special missions. He's a great guy and he's brilliant and I love him. His name is Rick Grenell. Please join me in welcoming him to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. You've probably seen Rick Grenell recently in Venezuela with President Maduro. And I was so excited that we were able to get Rick on the show, folks, because I love him. I think he's fabulous. But I want you to imagine this. So President Trump comes in and he says he's going to get rid of all of the Venezuelan gangs and Maduro's all upset. They're not taking him back. And President Trump says you're going to take them back and you're going to like it. Which is what my mother used to say that to me, Rick, because I was a skinny kid and my mother had a wooden spoon. I wouldn't eat. She never hit me with it, but she'd put it down and she'd say to me, you're going to eat your dinner and you're going to like it. So Maduro doesn't want to take back his criminals. And well, who does President Trump call? He calls the presidential envoy for special missions, Rick Grenell, who not only goes there and gets Maduro to agree that they're going to take all their dirtbag criminals back, but he gives some American prisoners that Maduro locked up. I mean, talk about a double whammy. Rick Grenell, welcome. Talk to us.
Well, thank you so much, Judge. It was really an honor to represent the United States. And one of the things that I love about President Trump is that he's just about the reality, right? He deals in reality. He's a great negotiator, but he deals in the world the way it is right now. And he looks at the situation and he says, we've got hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans in this country illegally. We love the legal immigration. And there's so many great Venezuelan Americans who have made really our country a better place. Mm-hmm. But there's hundreds of thousands of people who just jumped the line, came into the southern border from Venezuela. And President Trump looks at that and says, They broke the law. We got to get them out. Plus, when you look at the details, we've got a gang that is in this country called Tren de Aragua, and they're a violent gang that is a serious threat to the safety of our citizens. And so President Trump looks at these situations and he says, we got to get them out. We got to go talk to the leader of Venezuela, and we've got to get them out. Now, it's a little bit controversial to talk to the leader of Venezuela. But for President Trump, he understands what the United States needs. We have not only illegal immigration issue, but we have Americans in prison down there. And, it's a very typical thing when you work in international affairs with countries like Venezuela. It's very typical for the leadership in a place like Venezuela to say, well, we're holding these Americans because they're terrorists, or they're spies. Everybody's always a spy. And what they do is they don't understand, or maybe they do understand and they're just being difficult, but they label people a spy who have maybe worked for the government, the U.S. government, or worked in the U.S. military. Mm-hmm. And so they confuse this, like, for instance, there's an individual down in Venezuela who's a former Navy SEAL, mm-hmm. who was down in Venezuela, gets picked up, and is accused of trying to kill Maduro and the vice president. President Trump loves dialogue. We saw him go to Kim Jong-un and have dialogue. I think too many people, Judge, in Washington, D.C., and in the typical foreign policy world, they believe that talking is somehow a reward. I think talking is a tactic to get to your goal. Look what has happened in Ukraine. Our citizens have spent hundreds of billions of dollars to foment more war. And for 3.5 years, Joe Biden never picked up the phone and talked to Vladimir Putin. How do you solve problems when you don't talk? You can't talk to the New York Times. You can't give a statement to the New York Times and then think the other side understands you. Talking is a tactic. It's not weakness, it's strength.
Yes. Obviously, talking is a tactic. Donald Trump is a force to be dealt with. You are incredible and knowledgeable and know how to talk. So you come back with these prisoners. Did they even expect that was going to happen?
Well, they didn't want it to happen.
No. The prisoners, did they know?
Oh, they had no idea, Judge. Let me tell you a quick
I'd love
story.
to hear it.
So we had evidence that there were 12 Americans. And one of the things that I think people listening to us should be really proud of is there are individuals at the State Department who work very hard to understand where the Americans are around the world who are hostages. Yeah. And when these individuals, 6 individuals, Americans, got on the plane, it was a tense time, it's an emotional time. But because the information was so fresh in their mind, we had several State Department officials who really got to work. They went and carefully interviewed all 6, and they said, who else is there? What other Americans do you know when you're in prison? Give us information. You got to share this information. We, through those interviews, found 3 or 4 more Americans that we didn't know about. And so it really is good work by the State Department. But let me tell you that we asked for 6 out of the 12, knowing that was a very high number. They said no to all of them. And I just kept pushing, and I just said, look, I'm here. You're taking pictures of me here. You're using this for propaganda. We're here to talk. We want to continue talking. We want to continue sharing information. You got to give me 6. And so I waited for more than 2.5 hours at the plane that the Air Force provided for me with Air Force protection. We did this all in secret. Nobody knew. And I waited on the tarmac and just kept saying, I'm not leaving until I have 6. And we presented the evidence of 6 of the 12 that we felt were very easy to give up, that we didn't have to share information on. 6 people that they were wrong on. And so we're waiting on the tarmac 2.5 hours. We see some activity, so I walk down the plane. I'm standing at the bottom of the plane, and across the tarmac, about 12 cars come in. And they come in, and then they back into their spaces. So the headlights are looking at us. It's now starting to get dark. The headlights are shining on me, so I can't quite see. But I'm maneuvering enough and closing one eye, and so I see that individuals are getting out of each car. They start with one car. And I finally realized that out of the first car, there's an individual. And I see this person in prison garb walk to the front of the car. So I'm like, I don't know what I should do yet. They have them standing in front of the car. Yeah. The next one that comes out of the second car, I can clearly see has a black hood over their head. And I get outraged. And I start walking, and my security guys were like, I don't think you should walk over. I was born with a gene when it comes to my career and my work that I don't care what you say about me. It doesn't affect me. I was just born with that gene that I don't care. Now, personally in my life, I'm pretty emotional with my family and friends. I can be super empathetic. But in moments like this, God has just given me this ability to not care. And so I'm like, there's an American with a black hood over their head, surrounded by people with big guns, and he's in shackles. I'm not going to stand here. So I walk over, and then I'm like, they're not going to shoot a diplomat. So I walk over, and I walk straight up to these individuals. By this time, there's now 2 Americans in prison garb, standing in front of me, and I say to them, I'm an American diplomat, get on this plane. It's an American plane. Walk. And my team immediately grabs them, starts walking. But I know we've got 4 more, so I'm standing there. Mm-hmm. And the next one comes out, and it's gut-wrenching. And again, I'm not an emotional person in these situations, but for the first time in my career in 25 years, I got a little emotional. It was the best day of my career, but it was also the most intense.
Yes.
I'm standing in front of this individual who I don't know, and he's got a black hood over his head. Mm-hmm. And they take the black hood off in front of me. The first person this individual sees is me.
Yeah. And
he's squinting a little bit.
Oh, my God.
He would later tell me that he has no idea what's about to happen to him. Yeah. He didn't know where he was going. All he knew is that he was in handcuffs and shackles in the back of a car with a black hood over his head. And so now he's standing on the tarmac. He takes the black hood off, and he's looking at me. And I can tell that he is afraid. He's looking at me like, what's next? And I say to him quickly, I'm an American diplomat sent by Donald Trump.
Wow.
And he bursts into tears. And he hugs me.
And my God.
And a wave of emotion on me, and I just said,
of course.
Dude, you got to get on the plane. You got to get out of here. They're taking the hoods off and giving them to me. We get all 6. I count 3 times. I'm like, 6. I say to my team, did we get 6? There's no more movement in the cars. And I don't thank anybody. I just get on the plane, and I tell the pilot, let's get out of here.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
And when we took off, all 6 of those prisoners clapped. And about an hour into the flight, one looked at me, and he was very emotional. And he said to me, Mr. Ambassador, I need to know, did you exchange money or prisoners for me?
Oh.
And I looked at him, and I said, no, sir, we didn't exchange anything. And he said, thank God, because I don't want anyone to go through what I just went through. And so we called President Trump. And it was an explosive conversation. President Trump just had to sit there while these guys, one guy said, every single day in prison, I wrote on my prison cell, Donald Trump for president, because I knew, Mr. President, if you won, I knew you would come get me.
We're out of time, but I must tell you, this has been one of the most fascinating and moving interviews that I've had in a long time, Rick. You are phenomenal. Rick Grenell, we thank you. I'm sure those men thank you. And one thing, are there women who were held in some of these places as well?
There is one woman who is, if I remember right, she's not a U.S. citizen, but she's got the paperwork to be a lawful resident. And she's in Venezuela. Yeah, she was one of them that we were looking at. So there's a difference between Americans and then just someone who is lawfully a resident. And usually they're lawfully residents of multiple countries.
Yes,
but our first priority is always the American citizens, those who have American passports.
Of course. Rick Grenell, thank you so much for sharing that very emotional story of getting those prisoners back, those hostages back from Venezuela. And thank you for everything you do. God bless you. And it was just an honor having you on the show. Rick, I really appreciate it. God bless. Take care.
This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Joining us now is the president of the League of American Workers, and also a TV surrogate for the Trump campaign in 2016 and 2020. He also worked on the J.D. Vance campaign for Senate in 2022. You've probably seen him on Fox. His name is Steve Cortes. And he was previously on a Hispanic Advisory Council. So let's join Steve in welcoming Steve to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Now, Steve, I want to talk to you about an article that you wrote that I just took a look at, and I think it's phenomenal. It is an article that talks about the illegals, the foreign flags, and the foreign protesters. We are now at a point where we are literally delivering on President Trump's promises to remove illegals who are criminals from this country. And you're seeing something unusual. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Sure. Something unusual and, frankly, I think offensive and obnoxious, okay? And I say this as a son of an immigrant, of a legal immigrant to the United States. And by the way, I think legal immigrants are some of the people most offended by the way the illegals are acting, because legal immigrants know how difficult, how expensive, time-consuming it is to become a legal citizen of this country. But what we're seeing, and this is what I write about in my Substack article, is foreign flags and foreign protesters waving these international flags and blocking roads all across America. It's particularly virulent in Los Angeles, which isn't entirely surprising because, of course, California has a big concentration of illegals and has a lot of American radicals who are their allies and believe in open borders, including major elected officials like, of course, their governor and others, Nancy Pelosi and thankfully now former Vice President Kamala Harris, all of whom are allies of these illegals who are literally shutting down freeways, the 101 out there. And by the way, this is a serious crime to shut down a road. And for some people, it's not just an aggravation. OK, it is a major hindrance to their life. I believe it's a form of assault when you prevent somebody from moving where they want to move. Right. That's a form of assault. But in addition to just the sort of practical aspect of those riots, and some of them are riots. I mean, they're attacking police. What I think the takeaway should be is that, look, Donald Trump won a momentous mandate victory. He won every swing state. He won the popular vote. This was the biggest Republican national win since the 1980s. His number one signature issue was immigration. Okay. So in other words, the people clearly have spoken on this issues that we want control of the border and we want dangerous illegal immigrants out. I want all illegal immigrants out, but we want to prioritize the dangerous ones first, the people who we know have been convicted of crimes either in their homeland or even here in the United States. That's the priority of ICE. That's what the deportation agenda is right now carrying out and implementing, thank goodness. And what we see are these obnoxious foreign radicals waving foreign flags on our soil. And by the way, if they're that proud of those countries, they are very welcome to go back there on their own.
I knew you were going to say that.
It shouldn't be on us to have to arrest them and transport them to those homelands. If they love those homelands so much, you are very, very welcome to transport yourself back to those places. Well,
Steve, the article is a great article, and I want to start with, it's called Foreign Flags and Foreign Protesters, folks. It's Steve Cortes' Substack. But when you talk about closing major transportation arteries, you're right. I mean, you call it a premeditated form of assault. As a prosecutor, I'm kind of dancing around that. Sure. But the idea is that it is an interference and an interruption in commerce. A lot of that commerce having to do not only with business, but with safety, people on the way to the hospital delivering a baby, all the crazy things, who's got a heart attack, all the crazy things that happen. And honestly, Steve Cortes, I don't think that we're tough enough on the people who shut down our transportation systems and our arteries. Now, you're going to laugh, but I remember, I think it was the climate change activist, Steve Cortes, who in Italy, they ended up stopping some of the roads and interfering with the roads in Italy. And you know what happened? Forget the police. The Italians got up and just started throwing them up on the side of the road and just getting back in their little diesel trucks and driving along. I mean, you got to see some of the humor in this because it is infuriating. And you talk about naturalized citizens, Steve. As a judge, I swore in newly naturalized citizens for years. And it was their most proudest moment for many of them. The family, their employers, everyone came. They waved the American flag. And we're missing that. We're missing an allegiance to the country that is taking them in, giving them a homeland. But besides, all of that nationalism, let's talk about the crime. Let's talk about the fact that when we make an effort to remove the criminal illegals, we're having a lot of trouble, obviously, with the people like Pritzker and Brandon Johnson and Newsom. But I got to tell you, with Tom Homan and now with Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, they're saying, hey, look, under Article 8, Section, I think it's 1324, Title 8, 1324. If you harbor or you prevent us from accessing someone, we're going to charge you with harboring an illegal and obstruction. So there is a criminal component to this if they stop people, if they stop ICE from making arrests. But I think, and I want to get your take on this, Steve. How long do you think this is going to take, number one? And number two, how far should they go?
Yeah. Both great questions. In terms of how long it will take, unfortunately, it's going to take years, right? I don't think this is weeks or months. This is a years-long process. The U.S. border, here's the problem. The U.S. border has effectively been open since the 1980s. The only time that we really got serious operational control was in Trump's first term. And even then, toward the end of his term, right? Because he walked into a mess. And then, of course, so it's been bad for decades. And a bipartisan failure, by the way. Establishment Republicans have been every bit as complicit and blameworthy as the Democrats have on open borders nonsense. And establishment Republicans in Washington, because they previously did the bidding of big business, were in favor of a constant flow of cheap labor and willing to look the other way on illegal migration. So to answer your question, though, to undo decades of lawlessness is not going to be quick or easy, but it's necessary. And, we're getting started. As far as how far it should go in the prioritization. And I will tell you this, by the way, too. I don't want to only cite the election, which is the most important poll, if you will, of all on immigration and Donald Trump, but also polling that my organization, I do a lot of polling. And when we poll this about, and we don't separate out dangerous illegal migrants versus we just said illegal migrants, mass deportation of illegal migrants. It comes in at plus 18 in favor. It's 55 to 37. That's pretty significant. By the way, even among Hispanics, it's plus 9. So
absolutely.
Americans overwhelmingly agree with mass deportation. And again, they prove that at the ballot box, not just polling. Now, how far should it go? Excuse me, there's a little more disagreement. Now, I think they all need to go, personally. But I think there's widespread agreement that people who have committed additional crimes on top of the crime of coming into this country have to go. And, and let me give you, it's one of the worst examples, but it's very telling. Laken Riley, the beautiful young American girl who was killed on the seemingly safe college campus, the University of Georgia, in the middle of the day jogging. Jose Antonio Ibarra, her killer, not only did he cross the border illegally, Joe Biden's open border, but he was then arrested twice. In the so-called sanctuary city of New York, he was arrested. Right. And then in Athens, Georgia, where he killed her, and Georgia in general is a red state, but Athens is a college town, is very blue, very liberal. That's a sanctuary city. Arrested again, neither time turned over to ICE for deportation.
I got to stop you there, Steve Cortes, just for a second. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but here's part of the problem. When you say Republicans and Democrats are responsible because maybe Republicans want workers, the Democrats alone are responsible for the no bail laws across this country. So Jose Ibarra, I mean, obviously, dirtbag murderer, endangering the welfare of a child in New York. That was a crime he was charged with. But more than that, he would have been locked up in New York as an illegal who committed a crime, but for the no bail laws. That the Democrats created because, it's terrible. It's not fair to put him in jail. Well, they've got no connection to this country. The purpose of bail is to make sure you return to court. If you're illegal, you've got no roots in the community. But I just had to spin on the Democrats. But keep going. Now, how far do we go?
You're 100% right. And by the way, Republicans now, now have gotten in line, right? Largely thanks to Donald Trump, thanks to the America First movement. I'm more talking historically that the Bush wing of the Republican Party was very different. But thankfully, no, you have now almost unanimity among Republican voters and office holders, even if they don't believe it, down deep, they're too afraid to buck the voters, right?
What do you do, Steve? What do you do, Steve Cortes, about the person who is, has got a business? Okay. They're illegal. They've been in the country 20 years. I don't know what the business is. Let's say they make, they make sandwiches or something, or they've got a family. Their kids are in schools. How far do we go?
Yeah. Listen, I'm of the view that they all need to go. They can reapply and come back into the United States the correct way and get in the back of the line. And I know that might sound very, very harsh, but the reality is if we don't get serious and strict about migration enforcement, it's going to continue as it has for decades.
But now, Trump is, Steve Trump is. He's going to shut that border. Anybody who comes in now, get your butt back to wherever the hell you came from. Okay, but I'm talking about, he's going to lock down that border. I'm not concerned about that. How far do we go?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think we'll reach a consensus on that issue, and probably I am to the right of where most Americans are. I'll be the first to admit that, okay?
Yeah.
Probably most people aren't as hawkish on it as I am, and that's fine. That's what's supposed to happen in a democracy. But the point is, we can't even talk about those issues, the kind of tougher cases, until we get all the easy cases, meaning the clear, dangerous, derelict people, until we get all of them out. And that's not a small group of people, as you well know, Jeanine. Until we get those people out, I don't even think we can have that then consensus conversation on, okay, what do we do with people who are illegal but seem to be otherwise pretty good residents of the United States? That we can reach a consensus there, but only once we've deported the mass of dangerous folks, and it's not small.
Yeah, no, it is not small. And let me ask you about the USAID just for a couple minutes that we have left. The money that's been going to these foreign countries for absurd things like LBGT operas and trans surgeries in other countries. Has anyone ever looked at this before now? I mean, is this just corruption? Right. To me, it's corruption. To me, Steve Cortes, and I may be wrong about this, but you don't send money to some non-government organization in a foreign country that does nothing for the United States, and we're not promoting American interests without somebody giving you a kickback. I'm telling you, it's the foreign aid where all the corruption is. You ask Bob Menendez and all the rest of them, and Joe Biden got started with Senate Foreign Relations and that money. So talk to me. What are your thoughts?
I agree. How much of it gets funneled back to the United States via NGOs, via, so-called foundations, pretend charities, Clinton Foundation? My strong guess is quite a lot of it. By the way, corollary, I think the same thing happens in Ukraine, right? We just had Zelensky, and this is related, but we just had Zelensky say, hey, you guys sent 175 million. And he said, I believe the number he says, we only got 77. Okay, well, where's the other roughly $100 billion? And how much of it got back to the United States, to leftists and globalists in the United States? So I think you're exactly right. Like, as awful as what we're learning is so far, as awful as the news is, once we start peeling this onion back more, I believe it's going to get far, far worse from here. And thank goodness we're starting to do this. And we have transparency, finally.
Well, and one of the things about Ukraine, Steve Cortes, is I remember the war starts, right? All of a sudden, Jill Biden is going over and Nancy Pelosi is going over. And my favorite, Steve, is Randy Weingarten. Randy Weingarten is going to Ukraine. Why?
Right.
You know what her answer was? I'm comparing the educational system of Ukraine. And you stupid woman, there is no educational system. The schools are bombed out. I mean,
not to mention, Jeanine, should they be taking advice from us? Okay, we just got test scores out, and eighth grade reading has never been worse, never in the history of the United States. So we are the last people who should be instructing anyone on how to do education, right?
Yeah, it is amazing. Anyway, Steve Cortes, it's great having you on the show. We look forward to having you back again. Thanks so much for joining us on the Tunnel to Towers Foundation show.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate
All right, take care. All right, guys, really smart guy there. Very, very interesting. Great article he wrote. Hopefully Steve will be coming back. And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation, I will be gaveling out with my closing argument. It's all coming up here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Okay, it's time for me to gavel out with my closing argument. Not a lot to say, folks. The difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration is startling. It is absolutely startling. And apparently, word is that President Trump is going to lay off nearly every USAID worker. And then they'll make a decision as to who they're going to keep. And the laying off of these employees and the supervision of this whole thing is going to Marco Rubio, who's Secretary of State. Now, why does that make sense? It makes perfect sense because Marco Rubio knows what foreign nations we can work with, where our American interests might be aligned, and he should decide who gets that money. He should be the one who is in a position based upon our relationship with these countries and the Department of state. And that way we'll have some idea of what's going on, and there will be an alignment of interests. Now, also this week, we saw the Democrats freaking out over Elon Musk. I mean, they're saying, Elon Musk is unelected and he's running the government, and Donald Trump's a dictator. So I want you to think about this. If Donald Trump is a dictator, I don't know any dictator who's going to step aside and say, I won't be a dictator today. I'm going to let Elon Musk dictate what we're going to do. If you know anything about Donald Trump, rest assured, he's the one who's running the government, nobody else. Okay? And the fact is, if we can bring in people to unearth this lunacy and this pouring of American money for outrageous reasons to people who don't respect us and who don't appreciate it, then we ought to be grateful. And, I think it is, Senator Fetterman. I'm starting to like this guy, John Fetterman from Pennsylvania. He's saying, these Democrats, and he's a Democrat, they may not have learned their lesson. They're still jumping up and down. Chuck Schumer's jumping up and down. Al Green is shaking his cane. Maxine Waters is screaming at the top of her lungs. We need to give this foreign aid to these countries. We need to make sure they can get abortions over there. We need to make sure that kids are educated on transgender issues. We need to make sure that other countries have operas about transgenders and DEI. I mean, after the incredible defeat that they had at the ballot box, they still are ranting and raving about things that make absolutely no sense. And I think that it was James Carville that called it, get this is a quote, a level of jackassery. Carville is so outraged at the Dems over his frustration and on things like apparently Democrats are pushing for pet bereavement leave, and now with the DNC and his gender rules. I don't know if you saw it, but the DNC, the Democrat National Committee, when they had their meeting, even they couldn't understand. Jamie Harrison couldn't understand the gender rules, so he had to call someone else to read the gender rules. You got one male, one female, and one of something else, but they didn't know what the something else was. I mean, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, folks, they did so much damage to this country. If they want to go down that road, hell, have at it. Go down that road. Stay on that road. Because America, common sense will win. Americans are taking over. And Rick Grenell's story of getting those hostages out of Venezuela, in return, getting that dictator Maduro to take back Tren de Aragua, which is one of the most violent gangs in the world, was a feat that only Trump and the Trump team could accomplish. But Rick Grenell's description of getting the American hostages out, one of them showing up with a black hood on his head, surrounded by men with long guns, was very emotional and very telling of the lengths that we will go to bring Americans home. Strange concept, isn't it? Bringing Americans home when the Biden administration wouldn't even do a wellness check on hostages. I can't believe we're out of time already. Make sure you join us right back here next week. Same time, same place for the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. And watch that game, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Larry Kudlow here with an urgent warning. While we celebrate Trump's historic win, inflation continues to drain your IRA and 401k, and China is now targeting your money with a kill shot on the dollar. That's why thousands of Americans are shielding their savings with gold and contacting the experts at Colonial Metals Group. Gold has protected American wealth through every financial war. For a free 2024 gold guide that explains everything, please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908. The experts at Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you bulletproof your wealth with gold. Go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908. That's 800-621-3908 for a free 2024 gold guide to learn how you can protect your life's work and if you qualify for a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver right now. freegoldguide.com/Kudlow.